I don't know if it would really work there because of I guess the community itself. There's a lot of single family houses down there. There's a couple of apartment buildings that sort of fit in with the area. They're not too high. 6 stories. I don't know if it would work in there. It would sort of stand out. 3, 4 stories may possibly, depending on the design of the building, because we want to keep with the character of the community. Keep the design and everything within the character of the community. Possibly, maybe up by the highway or something like that might work for the higher density. That's where most of the townhouses and everything else are up there. But the main Hammond area, the 120 acres or so that John Hammond gave them to develop the community in, I don't think it would fit because it's mostly single family and this sort of thing.
Well, I feel you have this historic area with a lot of historic houses. So what do? You tear down the houses to build. I wouldn't want to see anything higher than 3 stories. Some of the apartments that are there now are 3 stories, and when they built those apartments, I immediately went around and took pictures of the old houses thinking they would be gone by now. I'm glad that they haven't disappeared, and I feel that if you put in higher density houses, it's kind of like, I guess you call it like throwing out the bathwater with the baby. You lose the character of the older houses to put in higher density houses, and I wouldn't want to see it happen. But I don't know how you stop if somebody wants to sell their house and retire, and somebody doesn't like the house and wants to build a new modern house in it. I know there was some. Excuse me. I know there was an article in the Vancouver Sun a few months ago where there was some housing being lost in Vancouver area, and I wouldn't want to see that happen in Hammond, but I'm not too sure how you stop it.
Yeah, I would support increased density in Hammond. I think that there are sacrifices that would be made, but if you walk through Hammond, especially in my neighborhood in the upper part, there are sections of land there that are completely undeveloped. They're hard to manage. They grow up. There's a whole 2 blocks with one of them is in process for an apartment building. I think it's totally appropriate. What people are worried about losing is the heritage character of the neighborhood. So if we can have some restrictions on the style of the building, certainly the stories, I'm not sure if 4 would be okay. I don't know if 6 is too high. Certainly the people on the other side, the north of that building, would be losing a lot of shade. But if you have higher density, you can put the building in the middle of the lot and you can have green space around it. You have opportunities for better sidewalks around that area. The other thing about higher density is that if you say no to Hammond, which has cross streets and a fully realized street plan and possibility of upgrading those streets quite easily, and the services are already there, then what you're saying yes to is encroaching into the green space in Maple Ridge and spreading out into Silver Valley, and these places that people say, hey, there's no services up there, this is not a good place to build. Well, Hammond is ready-made for increased density. It's got all the services right there. So I think it makes a lot of sense, and there's a great opportunity to preserve the heritage and the character of the existing houses, and have select spots where the density increases.
Lower Hammond, not so much. I don't know that ground-wise it could feasibly be done because of the ground area down in Lower Hammond. If it was along the waterfront, perhaps something 3, 4 stories could make a go of it. There is the area, 207th, the area Lorne, Maple Crescent, and 207th. There's a triangular area there. There's already a couple existing apartment blocks there. They're 4-story. They blend in quite fine. To go higher, I don't think would be an issue as long as they were built so they look presentable from the outside, not just your proverbial box type structure. I think having it be possibly a separate seniors building might be nice. I find a lot of I know 2 people that live in either of the apartment buildings, and they find the biggest problem is the transient renters cause a lot of problems, but unfortunately they didn't get into the building soon enough to have a say on the stratas. So their buildings are over 80% renters, and that's caused nothing but problems. I'd love to see, there's a large area there, 113th and 206. I would love to see a family townhouse development in that area, even to the point of the street on either end being strictly for that townhouse development. I don't think we have enough affordable family townhouse type development in the area. So yeah, I would love to see it densified. I think if it could cluster in an area and kind of move out from there would be great. And that I'd like to see a variety too, you know, apartments, townhouses, you know, cost-wise, whatever's going to work. I know I don't plan on staying in my house for another, well, maybe 5 years. And then I also look forward to downsizing. Yeah. And that, so I would like to be able to stay within my area if at all possible. And that, I paid into the tax base. I love the facilities and what's offered here in the community. I don't need to go moving to the boonies type of thing, as you see so many seniors type of thing doing. That's not for me. Yeah. And that I like my community and want to stay, so.
Maybe where there's existing right now, there is an apartment, I think maybe 2 or 1 for sure on, I think it's 113th Avenue. Maybe if there was another one right there, yes, I would support it. Certainly not 6 stories, but within the same, like 3 stories, I think would be fine. I don't think it would work right down on Maple Crescent. I think that should be left alone as commercial or something, but a few blocks up, right beside the other apartment, I would say 3-story, but not a whole bunch.
I think in order to keep Hammond viable and for Hammond to carry its fair share of Maple Ridge's growth, certainly we have to have some increased density. And I'm in support of, I guess, what I would call some judicious increase in density, you know, with proper attention to the context, to adjacent properties, to, you know, generous setbacks, stepped back buildings that incorporate some heritage or historical cues in them, and generally try to fit in with what's there rather than just ignore what's there with a sort of an assumption that, well, it will be gone someday anyway. There are certainly some houses that aren't going to be renovated, and there's some that have been recently torn down. I can see some of these parcels being, you know, assembled for, you know, small multifamily development, and I think I could see, you know, a sort of 3-story type situation. Also, too, I think there's a great opportunity again along the south side of Maple Crescent, adjacent to the tracks. I have in the past lived in live-work loft studio with commercial on the ground floor, directly against train tracks. The place was always full, always fully rented out. And I think it's an interesting, different type of housing that Maple Ridge doesn't offer right now. It could be an interesting addition to that street and help to create more population along there. And there could either be commercial or office first floor and possibly some live work or whatever above it. Special treatment on the south side for the train noise, and people in Hammond, we get along with the train just fine. It's not the big deal that some people try to make it out to be.
I think so, particularly given that while Hammond is a mature area, there are also a lot of empty lots there, and multiple side-by-side lots, which lends naturally to a more density. I very much support the idea of greater density and reducing the stresses on developing, you know, farmland or wilderness areas. So I'll really agree with up, not out. I think 3 to 4 stories could be doable if it was sensitive to the aesthetic of the neighborhood. I also think that density shouldn't, like, the buildings shouldn't swallow the entire lots. That one of the charms of Hammond is the gardens, and the, you know, you walk around Hammond and look at the cute houses and the cute gardens and that. So I'd like to see density, but with some reservation made so that the lots have some landscaped areas, garden areas, that sort of thing. I think density around the commercial area would be a good thing. But again, in the existing areas, probably not more than 3 or 4 stories.
I think I would want to limit densification to something like 4 stories. That's what Jane Jacobs recommends. But I am more concerned in how the densification happens. The buildings have to be built, in my opinion, so that they foster a sense of community. They are not just warehouses for families, but they become part of the community. Their architecture fosters community among the residents of the building and with the rest of the community. I have visited a couple of presentation centers, and the salespeople could not show me any common areas for people to make connections. It's the connections we make that give our lives meaning, that allow us to know our neighbors. If there's no place to make those connections, then we're SOL. Oh, and they need to be environmentally sustainable as well. The greener, the better. There needs to be some carrots to encourage that kind of development rather than same old, look like the rest of them. Like
limited to it. And I have a couple concerns. One is the historic field. So along, again, Maple Crescent Corridor, I'd love to see some commercial residential combinations, maybe 3 or 4 stories high, not much higher than 3. Perhaps concrete build with wood build over top of it, maybe all wood build, tying in with the feeling. I think we can look to Fort Langley for ideas of how to keep history and develop businesses along major routes like Maple Crescent and so on. And then I think the other example is Osprey Village, and they've done a nice, really nice job of combining a couple businesses in with a residential area that again is dense, but it doesn't go too high and it has character to it. I'd be worried about building in Lower Hammond because of, I think, the flooding that some people are experiencing on their roads might become a problem with the high density going up and pushing earth down.